Hey, what's up? Welcome to CineMike. For this episode, I'm going to review Black Panther, the latest offering from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Well, I'm going to start off by saying that I'm a huge fan of the MCU franchise in general, but, and this is a bit of an unpopular opinion, leading up to this movie, I started to feel maybe a little fatigue with the formula. Now, that's not to say that I didn't enjoy Phase 3. I have. It's just that it's gotten stuck in a bit of a routine of being more comedic. Now, that's aside from Civil War, which obviously had a little drama and depth to it and commentary, but for the most part, they've been very light. One of the things I love about comics is how they tackle different genres. They're all different. You know, some of them are light and comedic, but then some of them are dark and scary or dramatic, you know. And one of the things I love about Logan is how refreshing it felt in the midst of all this. So the one thing that I wanted from Black Panther is I just wanted it to shake things up a little bit. Give me something different than most of the Phase 3 offerings. Now, coming into the review for this movie, did it do that? And I will say for the most part, yes it did. Was it, you know, as dramatic and deep as Logan? No. It still had the light, it still had the comedy, but there was definitely a bit more character and depth and drama and commentary in there than what we've had recently. So I appreciated that. This is a bit closer to the spirit, at least tonally, of Civil War, which is only appropriate because that was the movie to introduce T'Challa, aka Black Panther. And in that movie we saw, you know, the beginnings of him going down the road of becoming king of Wakanda, the death of his father, him trying to seek vengeance. And that leads us into this movie where now he is having to return home, having to assume that role of king. And it's a bit of a coming-of-age story of him recognizing the responsibilities that come with that position, the faults of his, you know, predecessors, and having to deal with the consequences of past mistakes. I really like the dilemma that Wakanda presents to this world and to the characters. You have this highly advanced culture that has chosen to isolate themselves for fear of exposure and the potential consequences of that. They have this really powerful resource that fuels their society called vibranium. So what happens when the rest of the world finds out about that? So that's the, you know, question that has made them decide to stay hidden and to not involve themselves in the troubles of the world. Obviously, that comes at a cost, and it's one that T'Challa must face and overcome if he's to truly be worthy of being king. So that's pretty deep stuff for a Marvel film, certainly deeper than some of the other stuff we've had recently. Now, juggling all of this is director Ryan Coogler, who was the director of Creed. It just seems like there's a lot of passion in telling this story, and he did a really good job. Something that I feel a lot of directors have trouble with in this franchise is really making it their own. It feels like the studio wants these movies to always fit into a pre-made package. You know, it's like the director's job just to guide it into their expectations. Whereas with Coogler, it feels like he had a lot more creative control, and I don't know if that's true or not, but it just feels like this one is different enough that you had a fresh perspective on it. So if the studio granted him some freedoms, then I think it paid off. The movie does feel different, and that is what I really like about it, and that is the one thing that I will say makes this one stand out from the rest of the pack in most of Phase 3. I really respect a director that can give you all of the visual spectacle, the comic book action that you're expecting, but also give you developed characters that have real motivations and backstories, and also layer in some social commentary, which this movie certainly does. There's a lot to like about this movie and much less to complain about, so a lot of this is going to be me just praising it, but I really enjoyed the visual palette of this movie. It just, the designs of things from costumes to sets to Wakanda itself, the city, just really detailed and well thought out. Everything looked really beautiful. The only complaint I will have about the visuals is that maybe there was a little bit too much of a dependence on visual effects. There's some moments where it's like, hey, would it kill you guys to shoot on location? You know, clearly there's moments where they are against green screen with a CGI background. I would have liked to have seen a little less of that. There's also obviously a lot of CGI doubles going on during the fight scenes. I would have liked to have seen more stunt guys actually in costume doing this stuff. But in general, though, it did look good. The action, and when there was stunts, looks solid. I have nothing more to complain about other than the overuse of CGI as far as visuals go. Now, one little petty complaint that I want to throw in there. In the middle of the movie, there's a car chase, which, by the way, is one of the best action scenes in the film. But during it, Andy Serkis' character Claw uses his hand cannon to blast a car to pieces, and the driver of the vehicle somehow miraculously is the only thing not blown into little bits, and they're intact on the driver's seat with the wheel in their hand, sliding down the street. I know that they were sacrificing believability for a comedic moment, but something about that just felt a little too ridiculous. Also, the cinematography, that's another thing to talk about. It has some of the most beautiful shots probably in recent memory in the MCU. I really love the sweeping shots over the city, and it just gives you a real sense of this environment, and it's just so different than anything else we've experienced in this franchise, and that's absolutely what I was looking for from this movie. So it delivered that. The other thing, too, that stands out in this movie is the music for me. The music is very different than anything else we've had in this series. Like, I feel like most of the MCU has this very generic composition where, honestly, it just all sounds the same. There's no memorable beats. Like, if you held a gun to my head and told me, hey, hum the theme from Captain America, I honestly couldn't do it. I can maybe remember the Avengers theme a little bit, but that's about it. But this movie, they make great use of different types of instruments, and I know that the film's composer traveled to South Africa to just get a general feel from local musicians for the bass of his score, and they also hired Kendrick Lamar to come on to produce the soundtrack, and so you have some great choices there. So both the visuals and the music give you something different than what you've experienced before from the MCU, and that's a plus. The movie also has a great cast of actors, with Chadwick Boseman returning in the starring role of T'Challa, aka Black Panther. And I thought he was one of the best things about Civil War, so it was great that he got to take what he started in that and expand on it in this. A couple things that surprised me about the actor is that he's actually an American, which I'm no expert on accents, but I thought he did a great job. And also, he's 41 years old. You'd never know it by looking at him because the guy's in great shape. But he's great in this. He totally carries the movie, and he's very relatable, and there's, a wisdom to the character, a strength. There's humor that he brings to it. It's a very balanced character. He's funny when he needs to be and serious when he needs to be, and jumping between those emotions always feels appropriate and smooth and natural. He also has really good chemistry with the rest of the cast, like Lupita Nyong'o as Nakia, and she's like a former lover of his, and she ends up rallying behind him whenever he's trying to struggle for the throne. And she's a really strong, independent, tough warrior all her own, and seems like a perfect love interest for our hero here. Also, you have Denai Guerrera as Okoye, and many of you might know her from The Walking Dead as Michonne, wielding a badass samurai sword. Well, here, she's also a badass as one of T'Challa's bodyguards. And she's really tough. I mean, I really liked her a lot. And she was a really strong character once again. One of the things that this movie does really well is making the entire ensemble feel like they're all contributing something. They're all really strong, capable, independent, and they can all have their own movies. Angela Bassett is also perfectly cast as Ramonda, T'Challa's mother and Queen Mother of Wakanda. She completely just makes sense. She has that wisdom, that strength, and she's a really good actress. Zuri's played by Forrest Whitaker, and obviously he is a really seasoned and talented actor who's been around for a long time. Just watch The Last King of Scotland to get a good idea of the range that this guy has. And he plays the archetype of the old wise man, mentor, but he also has a few surprises, developments with his character that offers some really important insight into some backstory. For me, the big breakout person from this movie is Letitia Wright as Shuri, who is T'Challa's younger sister. She pretty much is the gadget master, or kind of like the Q from like the Bond movies. She develops all of his weaponry, gadgets, suits, armor, tech, all that stuff. And she just brings so much humor and life to the role. Like every time she's on the screen, you're just smiling, just anticipating the next sassy or funny comment she has to make. She's great. I can't say enough about her. She's probably my favorite character in the movie aside from T'Challa. Also, if you really think about it, she must be one of the most intelligent characters in all of the MCU with the really advanced technology that she's developing. You also have Martin Freeman returning as Everett K. Ross, who is a member of the CIA, and we first met him in Civil War, and, he comes across kind of like a typical suit, a little uptight, rigid, very by-the-book type of guy, and he kind of gets thrust into this adventure whether he likes it or not. Freeman is an actor that I just have always appreciated. There's just something charming about him. He could have like a deadpan, expressionless face, but yet he'll deliver a line with a little twinkle in the eye and get you to crack a smile. Now looking at our villains, we have Andy Serkis returning as Ulysses Klaue, who was first introduced in Avengers Age of Ultron, where we saw his arm ripped off, and here we see it's been replaced with a sonic disruptor arm cannon. Sure, he's a bit over the top and cartoony. You could even criticize him for being a little one-dimensional. But he's also a lot of fun to watch. Serkis is just good no matter who he plays. Now last but not least, we have Michael B. Jordan as Eric Stevens, aka Killmonger. And he plays a mysterious character that comes out of the shadows and wants to claim the throne from T'Challa. I don't want to say much more beyond that because it may spoil some things, but I will say that he's probably one of the more developed and better motivated villains from the MCU. I feel that there's a relatable aspect to him. There are some steps of his plan that were a little glossed over and weren't totally clear. Also, Killmonger did fit into the MCU archetype of a villain being the hero's opposite, possessing similar skill and abilities. I will say though that here it feels slightly more warranted and justified than in the other films from this franchise. So in closing, I would definitely recommend that you check out Black Panther. This and Civil War are my two favorite films from Phase 3 of the MCU, and this does get me excited for the future of this character, what he has to bring to this universe. For one thing, in Infinity War coming out this summer, which this does get me pumped for that, but also I'm excited to see future sequels. What's going to be going on in Black Panther 2? I guess we will see. So they have my interest. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the very best that this particular movie could be for me, I'm going to give Black Panther an 8.5. And that was my review for Black Panther. If you enjoyed this video, then please click like, and feel free to leave a comment below. Tell me if you agree or disagree. Leave your own review. Also, feel free to follow me on Twitter at CineMikeNerd, and please, click that subscribe button if you want to follow my channel. So anyways, until next time, this is Mike, signing off.